Welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition, and this week it comes from Luke Talks Palace. As you might have guessed, he's a content creator who covers Crystal Palace, a familiar face of the podcast. Luke, welcome back. How are you keeping you well?
Yeah, cheers, mate. It's been a while, but yeah, I've been good. Hope you've been all good as well.
Yeah, had a wonderful festive time. Back to business though with 2026 and plenty of football to come. I was just saying there before we started recording that if we'd had this conversation a couple of months ago, perhaps I feel like it would have been a different conversation that we'd be having because looking at Palace's results of late, they haven't won in the last six and all competitions. Things have kind of shifted for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. And it feels weird because a lot of Palace fans, including myself, would probably, when the summer transfer window shut, have gone, wow, this December period's going to be tricky. Um, there's a lot we got to do. There's a lot of games we got to play, and the squad, a lot of us didn't think was, big enough to maybe deal with that. When the likes of Sarr was also going to AFCON as well. So obviously, the run hasn't been great. It wasn't to be expected as bad as it is. But it's one of them where luckily the form's not gone horrible, and there's also a chance still in the division to, carry on climbing up the league with how tight it is. So hopefully we're coming around the corner very soon.
Is that the kind of saving grace that when you haven't won in, I think it's 4 games in the Premier League, that given that the table is so close and 3 points and suddenly you're back into the top 6 or 7, does that kind of take a little bit of pressure off the manager when you haven't won in so many games?
Yeah, I think Newcastle fans probably feeling the same. One week you can feel like you're back involved in the higher levels of the table, and the next you're like, wow, if we lose today, we're back down to 14th or something like that. So it's got its pros and cons, but at the moment, definitely when we had everything we've had to be doing, the fixtures we had, the Carabao Cup, that whole week, playing Europe Leagues Cup, to be able to still come out of it and be like, on reflection, 3 points away from fifth into the knockout stages of Europe as well, and FA Cup round the corner as well. So, we do have to take the positives despite feeling like there could have been something there. And there's no pressure on Glasner from the fan base right now. Obviously, sometimes we would like a few earlier subs and stuff, but then you look at the squad and like the big issue is, the squad depth and not really what the manager's doing.
I was gonna ask you whether there was any pressure on him, and you've answered that. Does the fact that his long-term future, though, isn't signed, sealed, and delivered, plenty of speculation that he might end up going in the summer, does that have any impact on kind of the present day running of things in terms of the games that come up? Is it an unwanted distraction that is it playing a pretty big effect in the background?
It's really tough to say because you ask the fan base, 95% would assume he's going. But it feels a bit like, look, let's see what we can do this season with him because we do know he will possibly want a higher challenge. And if there's certain stuff that he isn't getting, he's had issues with the Frankfurt board as well. He may want to leave. So I think the pressure is massively on us in terms of that because the media are literally asking him every week, even though he said for ages, he wants to talk about in Feb and when the fixtures lighten up a bit. But, it's a hot topic. It is what it is. He's been linked to bigger clubs as well. So obviously the media are going to pick up on it. And a couple of the performances lately, there has been the question from the fan base, do the players know something we don't? Because it has looked a bit less, I don't want to say less passionate because they are all giving their all, but a bit more deflated. When that equaliser or that conceding goal goes in, heads have been down a lot more than before. So there has been the question, and it is an unwanted question as well. You just don't want to be dealing with that, especially when you definitely know Mark Gay's leaving as well. So it's a really tough one. It just adds a little bit of pressure, of course, and we'll just have to see what comes from it. But yeah, hopefully, he does the unthinkable and signs a new deal.
Well, fingers crossed for you guys. He's a top manager. Mentioned there the kind of run of form of late, and I watched the Spurs game. I didn't see too much of the Fulham game, but it does feel like you guys are creating chances. I think in the expected goals ranking. I mean, I hate it. I hate the fact I'm even bringing it up, but I will do just to cement my point. I think you're like fourth or fifth, so it shows that you are expected to score goals, and maybe you just aren't taking those chances. Is the kind of a feeling of frustration when you're watching, like for example, that Spurs game, chance after chance after chance, and it just you just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. And also, is there a sense of inevitability that maybe the opposition will either get a goal or this is going to end in a draw when really we should be winning because we have created so many chances?
Yeah, for sure, and I mean, the stats show we're, like, top 5 in the league for big chances created, and then top 3 in the league for big chances missed, and, you can't do that at a club like Crystal Palace. You have to take these chances, and, Mateta has been a big one for that, so thankfully he did get his goal yesterday to start the new year, but yeah, I would say lately over the December period, the big chances weren't as much as before. You definitely felt like this month has felt more like fatigue. Um, but it is just so frustrating when you do see, like, when you have made so many chances. Because I actually think when you are like a mid-table club, you need to be creating more chances, so there at least that worries away from your head, but just thinking what could be is always gonna be the question this season. Again, I will bring back the depth. You just think what could have been? Could we have had them extra 3 or 4 points here or there? But, you just gotta take it, and hopefully, we start creating, or sorry, scoring some bigger chances soon.
After Sunday, though, you can do
Yeah,
that
oh yeah, sorry, yeah,
next week.
yeah.
I suppose the big question is, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but you guys are closing in on Brennan Johnson from Tottenham, which on paper seems such a bizarre thing for Spurs to be letting him go. I mean, top scorer last season, 18 goals. I'm a big fan of him. I think he's electric. He can really fire the bullets into the box as well as take his own chances. Do we think he'll be involved on Sunday, or will it come too soon?
I think so. This is being recorded now around 11:30 on Friday. So I think if we get it done by 12 o'clock, the paperwork, he can be in the squad. That's tight. That's very tight. So, there's hope of it, but I'd say it's a slim hope at the moment. But yeah, for us, it's a really big message, a huge statement of intent as well to move this early. And I believe Johnson will be our record signing um, ever. So, it is a really big statement and maybe a big one to Glasner as well. And yeah, 18 goals you said there last season. That is really huge for us. And when I'm talking about all the big chances missed, Spurs fans say he's missing something on the ball. We don't need him for that. We need him just to finish off counter attacks, and that is exactly what he does, and a perfect player for Oliver Glasner. I think this may be just at home, but I believe yesterday's goal was our first from open play since November the 1st. So, we just need that person who's going to finish off a couple of chances. So, yeah, absolutely buzzing with that signing.
And even if he doesn't make the deadline and he's not available for Sunday, I suppose just having that confirmed over the weekend will be such a boost for the playing staff, for Glasgow, and for the fans as well.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a few injuries at the moment. We'll probably talk about that as well. But one of them is Nketiah, who's out 6 to 8 weeks. So, just to have an attacker, if he is in that Newcastle squad, it would massively give us more confidence because you can just think, even if he doesn't start, you actually have a very good attacking option off the bench. And if he isn't, if he's just fully confirmed, it will just, get the fans a bit more excited for the near future.
Talk to us then about those injuries and kind of the starting 11 that we'll be expecting from Palace on Sunday.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be similar to the one you've seen in the last couple for us. That front three is gonna be Mateta, Pino, probably Devaney, because Devaney's a bit better at the defensive stuff as well, so that's quite helpful, especially when we've got Nathaniel Klein in over Munoz. Klein played really well, to be fair, yesterday, so can't fault him. But with the pace of some players that Newcastle have, Klein is gonna tire out in that game, and he does need that help. Will Hughes picked up an injury yesterday, so he might not be available. It felt like a slight hamstring injury. He was feeling it in the first half, lasted about 20 minutes in the second half, and that massively changed us because it meant Lerma would come into the middle and we had to bring on Cambo in defence, and it just kind of shifted our tactical setup a bit. But it's probably going to be Lerma, Wharton, and yeah, kind of the same back line, really, same as normal. And yeah, as I said, it's just going to be that worry if we are losing, or if we don't have something to hold on to 60 minutes in, it's going to be a really big struggle for us because I believe Newcastle have a fair few players possibly coming back or in the squad.
Yeah, defensively, Kieran Trippier, Tino Livramento have a chance to be involved, and maybe Sven Botman as well, which is fantastic. In terms of the approach that Crystal Palace will bring to the game on Sunday, are we expecting them to apply a low block at St James's Park?
It's tough for me because I do think we like our pressing, but I do think fatigue has meant that is a big struggle for us at the moment. The Fulham goal came from us just sitting back and soaking up pressure because you could just tell our players were knackered. So I think first half we'll try and keep that press going a bit. And when you're on the ball, maybe try and have a little bit of a high press, but obviously not taking the mick because we know what Newcastle can be like, especially with some of the few results we've had there over the years. So yeah, expect us to just be hoping for the counter attacks in this one and just hoping we get something out of it. But yeah, I think it's going to be quite tough for us.
I mean, if you guys decide to sit back, that is exactly what you should do. Like, if an opposition fan asks me the best way to get it in Newcastle, it's essentially to sit back and invite Newcastle on because they have real trouble breaking down that low block. At home, they're so much better at home than they are on the road. But still, we've seen teams come to St James's Park and really frustrate them by just saying, "Come on, then you come and break us down. You come and unlock us." And Newcastle just don't always have that answer. There is also that the fact that they can't hold on to a lead as well, which is really really frustrating. We saw it last time out against Chelsea, so there's a little bit of hope as well for Palace fans on Sunday. But I think with Newcastle United having picked up the win against Burnley, their form at home, this is a game they should be targeting to win. I'm tipping them to do that essentially because they need to keep building on good results like the one against Burnley. What are you wanting from this game? What from a Palace point of view? What's your expectation and what is your hope?
Based in mind our past records and stuff, definitely, I would take a draw massively. I know normally I wouldn't be taking a draw from the Fulham match, but I was massively happy with that, bearing in like the circumstances. We've got so many games coming up, injuries. A draw would be a very, very good result to kind of carry on stopping this kind of little rot we've had. Even if you're just ticking along with a few points, I mean, you could move up like two or three places in the division at the moment. So it would be a really good result for us. And yeah, Newcastle, they have dropped off a little bit this season, but at home, when they're up for it, they're up for it. And you've got that extra 2 days break. We played yesterday, you played Tuesday. I think that's going to be massively crucial for you guys. And so, yeah, definitely would take a draw.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that until you just mentioned it there because Newcastle, for example, the game against Chelsea, I think Newcastle played on the Wednesday or did they play on the, and it was a really quick turnaround to the Saturday 12:30 kickoff. So we're grateful for an extra
Mm,
couple of days rest. I think Eddie Howe will be as well, not only for the fatigue issue and to get them a little bit rested, but also just to have the chance to work on the training pitch and maybe look at trying something a little bit different because that's something that he's just not had all season, a bit like you guys with cup competitions and then European
yeah,
football. And it's what you want because a successful team, that's going to come if you're in Europe and you go far in the cups, you're going to have a busy schedule. But at the same time, when a manager is as meticulous as Eddie Howe, it does come with a bit of frustration that you don't have the time on the training pitch. So you'll be taking every
yeah,
extra couple of days that comes his way. In terms of that record you mentioned at St James's Park, I mean, you guys have had a terrible time of late. I mean, conceded 9 goals in the last two games up here on Tyneside. Is there an element of dread and the fear, maybe even just from the travelling fans?
yeah. There definitely will be. We're doing a lot of traveling this season, and it is hard to get up to St James's Park just after New Year and think, we've got to try and get something out of this. But it will be really interesting because yeah, you've mentioned 9 goals in the last 2 games there. I think when we do drop behind at St James's Park, it feels like a little bit of a mentality thing lately. I know the last one we missed the penalty in a crucial stage of the game. But yeah, it'll be a tough one to get lifted. That's when you just hope for a bit of a positive start and just see how long you go with it and see if you can create them big chances early doors.
Just a reminder, ladies and gents, this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Do click the link in the podcast description box to get your discounted subscription. One subscription, 10 devices, and there's no risk with a 30-day money back guarantee. It's perfect to protect any new electronic devices that you got over Christmas. And a big thanks to fpro.com as well, the training mat you need to enhance your football skills. It improves your focus and your skill on the ball, built around drills built by UEFA coaches. And we've got up to 60% off on that. So head over to fpro.com/EIBW20 to take advantage. Luke, talk to us about Palace's biggest weakness that you think Eddie Howe will have sniffed out.
At the moment, it feels a little bit like set pieces. I mean, I think 3 or 4 of the goals against Leeds were set pieces. The Arsenal goal we conceded at Emirates was set piece. The Spurs goal was a set piece. So for a team like Newcastle, Eddie Howe's definitely going to be on that massively with some of the players they've got as well. So that will be really interesting to see how we defend them. And then I think he'll just be thinking, if we're either drawing or got a slender lead 60 minutes in, we know Crystal Palace are going to tire. And we know the manager doesn't really have either the options on the bench or the ones he has, he's not going to trust too much, especially away from home. So, they just got to make sure they're in the game that long and they feel like they could probably massively attack it. I know, like against Burnley, you had that two goal lead, and then you let Burnley back into the game. So again, I just think that's going to be really important from Howe as well. He's going to think, if we do get the lead, how do we make sure we're not actually just sitting back and not seeing it out.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things you're describing of Glasner sound a little bit like Eddie Howe, late substitutions, maybe a little bit too rigid in the formation, and it's fascinating because some Newcastle United fans who have been overly critical of Eddie Howe, I would say, have said, "Oh, let's go and get Glasner," and yet it seems like they've got some of the same traits as, which is really interesting. In terms of the player that Newcastle definitely need to stop on Sunday, who are we looking at?
Howden Wharton, probably, in terms of just everything, both attack and defense. If he's going to be on form, then we can get something out of it. He creates chances. I mean, the way, I know so many people talk about it, but the way he sees an attacking pass before anyone on the pitch is even ready for it is ridiculous. Some of the passing he can play, the long passes, the short passes, and just the progressive passing he can do is so important to us. So definitely offensively right now, he's the big threat. Mateta, got his goal again, so that's his first in a few months. So you always had to say watch out for him. And then, just defensively, you just gotta try and work out how to get past Mark Gay, and that's for me, definitely Wharton and hopefully Mateta. We'll see how that goes.
And what about the biggest thing you're fearing from Newcastle United in terms of personnel? Who is the player that you hope isn't in the starting 11 on Sunday?
Well, there's a few for sure. But for me, just Bruno, he's always up for every game. He's just so good at what he does. He's so good in attack. He's so good in defense. He's just such a good midfielder. So, if he's for some reason feeling a bit ill, he should maybe, take this one as a breather, please. But I'm also a huge fan of Harvey Barnes. I think he's just such a good player, and I think he's been good this season. I was a bit surprised to see him come out this lineup. Maybe I was wrong for that because I don't watch every game, but he's not been in the lineup as much lately. But back in against Burnley, I think picking up the assist, so he's always a big threat for me. And then, I mean, Woltemade, I think he's having a very fantastic first season. I think what's so good about him as well is he's very good on the ball. It's not just about what he can do in terms of finishing. He's just, for his height, I can't believe what he's doing on the ball. So yeah, they're the big three for me.
Yeah, well, they definitely are the key players you mentioned there. I've tipped Harvey Barnes to come back into the starting 11 on Sunday. I think Anthony Gordon needs to be sent a message that he's just not been good enough. Harvey Barnes has really stepped up this season, so I'd be playing Barnes out on the left. If Wissa was fit, I would be playing him ahead of Voldemort. I think Newcastle look a better team with Wissa because he's kind of that traditional striker, but it's all about fitness and rotation, as you well know from watching Palace this season. All that remains to be done then, Luke, is to get your score prediction. How's it going to go?
Um, I'm gonna go score draw. Gonna go 2-2 and hope I'm right. Pray I'm right.
Well, I've gone for a 2-0 victory. I think it'll be scrappy. I think we'll see the best and worst of both sides. But Newcastle at home, they're very good at home. Even if they don't play well, they tend to get over the line, and that's what I'm clinging to. We need to see them build on a win against Burnley as well, and kickstart their season, build a bit of momentum. And we're at home for the majority of January. Plenty of games coming, and you need to start that first one with a win. So that's why I'm backing them to do so. Luke, thank you very much for popping on to the podcast and providing the insight into Crystal Palace. To you guys watching and listening, do let us know about anything that we've spoken today in today's episode. Rather, get that out of me off. Oh, that was a bit of a trip over there. Hopefully, Newcastle don't trip over themselves like I did there on Sunday. Do hit thumbs up, do hit like, do get into the comments, and I'll see you guys very soon.